So today is factoring when the quadratics are not equal, or sorry, when the leading coefficient is not equal to 1 for a trinomial. So sometimes they look like this. With all factoring, you should always double check to see if there's a GCF. Sometimes if there's a GCF, then you can divide that out and then it's fast factoring. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is. So let's take a look at question number 1. It says, first reading in bold, with all factoring, remember to check for a GCF. And then it says factor when A is equal, sorry, this one is when A is not equal to 1. First, we've got to check for a GCF. So when you look at this one, is there a number that divides into all 3 of these? Yeah, 3. So let's divide out that 3. So remember that that number always goes written out in front. And then I'm going to write down what I have left. 3 divided by 3, anything divided by itself is 1. 3 over 3 is 1. What is 18 divided by 3? 6. All right, now we need to factor, and what is in parentheses is fast factoring because that leading coefficient is 1 now. So this is like what we did on our quiz. So to do this, I'm going to off to the side. I'm going to get myself factors of 6. So I've got 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Which one can I put together to make 1? Which factor pair? 2 and 3 will work. So my factors, the 3 doesn't disappear. It's still there. So I have a 3 and then I've got my 2 factors. So I have X and then I have 2 and 3. I have to look at the bigger number. That bigger number, sorry, the middle number is negative. That means the bigger number has to be negative. So which one's bigger, 2 or 3? 3. So that 3 has to be negative. So if I have 3, would I add or subtract 2? Well, think about it. Don't just fart out answers. We need to know. And I said you can have a calculator. So if I have -3 and then I subtract 3, then I'm going to get -5. If I have -3 and I get more positive, so I'm adding 2, then I'm going to get to -1. Oh, sorry, that one is a plus. And we can double check. 2 times -3 gives us -6, and -3 plus 2 gives us -1. So that works. If I have factors, can I easily find solutions? Yeah, it's setting each factor equal to 0. So what if I set 3 equal to 0? Is that a true statement? No. So unless there's an X out here, the 3 doesn't do anything. It doesn't change your fact or your solutions. So what are my solutions? Do I need to show work for this type? No. So what do my solutions end up being? What are they? -2 and +3. Yep. So that one's positive, so this one will be negative. That one's negative, so this one will be positive. So anytime you see something with 3 terms, we really like it when A is equal to 1 because we can fast factor. But if it's not, just go ahead and see if there's a GCF because then you can factor that out and then fast factor. The next problem. What do we do when there's 4 terms? Grouping. We're going to factor by grouping. But first, we're going to check for a what? GCF. So looking at this problem, is there a GCF?
Yes.
What is it? 2. Let's factor out a 2. You can still do the problem, but it's going to be way easier if we factor out that GCF. So we're going to take that 2, put it out in front. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 16 divided by 2 minus 8 minus 1 plus 8. So we're going to still factor by grouping, but now I have to do it like this. This one is also a little bit different than some of the ones that we've been doing because I'm going to scoot this over. I'm scooting it over just so I have more room to show you. Look at the signs. This one is positive. This first group is positive, negative, and this second group is negative, positive. So we need to fix that so I know for sure that for my second factor, my second grouping, I'm going to have to factor out a negative, whatever it is. For my first factor group, is there a number that divides both into 1 and 8? Just 1. So there's no common factor there. Do they both have an X? Yeah, so we're going to factor out an X. So when I factor out that X, it goes written into the front. That 2 is along for the ride the entire time. So now I get an X out in front. Then I'm going to write down what I have left. 2 X's on top, and then 1 X on bottom will reduce to just an X. Negative 8X divided by X. X over X is 1, so I end up with minus 8. Factor by grouping. My whole goal for factor by grouping is to get 2 factors that are the same. And if I don't, I did something wrong. So my first factor is X minus 8. My second one, I better see that again as X minus 8. If I don't, I did something wrong. So my second set, is there a number that divides both into 1 and 8? Just 1. That's all I can pull out. So I'm going to take that and that gets written out in front. Then I write down what I have left. So negative divided by negative, that becomes a positive X. And 8 divided by negative 1 becomes negative 8. So now do I have 2 parentheses that are identical? Yes, so I can factor that out. I write it 1 time out into the front. So remember, if I get 2 factors that are the same, they write out in front. So I still have that 2, but now I'm going to write X minus 8, and then I'm going to write down what I have left. X and then minus 1. If I have factors like that, can I easily find solutions? Does the 2 matter? Does the 2 change my solution? No, so I only look at the stuff that's in parentheses. There has to be an X for me to find what X is. So there's no X with the 2. Are you guys taking notes? So what are my solutions? Positive 8, positive 1. We're about to move on to the new stuff. This is the stuff that we're learning today. So far, everything else has kind of been review. So this is the new stuff that we're learning today. So for today, it says factor and then solve. But with this problem, do you see how the leading coefficient is not 1? Is there a GCF that we could divide out and make it 1? No. So this is how you can solve when you have leading coefficient not equal to 1. This method is called different things, but we're going to split the middle. And I have a list of things for us to do right here. So we just checked for a GCF and there isn't one. So now we have to find the factors of A times C. So A, this is A, and this is C. So A times C is 2 times 15. So the factors of A times C, it's 2 times 15 or 30. That's what we're finding factors of 30. So factors of 30. We've got 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and 1 more. We've got 1 more. 5 and 6. So what we're doing now is we're trying to find the factor pair that can combine to make 11. Which factor pair can combine to make 11? 5 and 6. So what we're going to do, so we just listed all the factors. We found the factor pair that will make B. So we listed the factors, factor pair that will make B. Now we're going to split the middle term. So what this looks like, I didn't do anything to the first. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite that middle term as plus 5x and plus 6x. So do you agree that 11 is the same thing as 5 plus 6? Right? So all we're doing is once we split the middle, how do we factor when we've got 4 terms? If you combine like terms, you're going to end back up here. So now we need to factor by grouping. So we just made this into 4 terms so we can factor by grouping. So we've got our 2 groups. And I will tell you that it doesn't actually matter which order that you put these in. You will get the same answer. Your work will look a little different than your friends, but you will end up with the same answer. So now we will factor by grouping. So for my first group, is there any number that can divide both into 2 and 5? No. Do they both have an X? So that's all we can pull out is an X. And we'll put that out in front. And write down what is left. So x squared, remember that's 2 x's on top, 1 x on bottom, becomes x. So I get 2x. And then x over x is 1. All I hear while I'm doing notes is the entire time. But that's okay. I'm going to give you time at the end of every single class period that you guys can talk. Other people are trying to listen. For my second set of, for my second group. So this is my first group. This is my second group. Is there a number that can divide into both 6 and 15? 3. So is that a positive or a negative 3? Positive. So we got to put it out in front as plus 3. And then write down what's left. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Did we end up with 2 parentheses that are exactly the same?
Yes.
Yes, yay. So we write it one time out into the front. Yep.
We can troubleshoot later. But do you know who was absent from this?
Yeah, I do. I just can't find my rosters.
Just
I
mark
still don't have
out,
them.
and I'll kind of,
Here, I'll just double check. This looks like, oh, okay, I see.
So the ones that you click, so those were the absent kids?
Yep.
And the rest were?
Yep. I know that Riley showed me a way that I could get to my rosters, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah, let me take off, we'll do it again, I'll combine it.
Okay. All right, so we found the factor pair, we split the middle, we factor by grouping. I'm forgetting to mark them off. Now, if we have factors, can we set them equal to 0 and solve? Yes. So one of them is pretty easy and we don't have to show, but for the one on the left, I do want to see that you. So we have to subtract 5. And then we have to divide by 2. So it's actually 5 halves. So that's why I want you guys to make sure that you write that one out. So we get -5 halves. And then what's my other factor? -3. And that is factoring by splitting the middle. And we do this when A is not equal to 1. So it's kind of like one extra step to do factor by grouping. Y'all good?
Check for what on the second one?
GCF. Question 4. I think we've moved on to the back. The next problem, is there a GCF that I can factor out? Is there a number that divides into all these? No. Okay, factors of A times C. A is 4, and then C is 3. So I'm checking for factors of 12. So factors of 12, I've got 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Is there a factor pair that I can put together to make -7? So I've got I could do -3 and -4. When you multiply negative times a negative, will give you a positive. It will. So I just split the middle. I hope we all agree that -3 minus 4 is the same thing as -7. And when I have 4 terms, I can factor by grouping. So I've got my 2 groups. And the first thing that I notice is that the signs are messed up. So this one's positive, negative, and this one's negative, positive. So for my second group, I'm going to have to divide out a negative. I also noticed that they're the same numbers, so this should make it kind of easy. For my first grouping, is there a number that can divide into 4 and 3?
One.
Just one. So the only thing I can pull out is a 1, and they both have an X. So I can pull that out in the front. I don't have to write the 1, it's just an X. So again, anytime I have 2 X's on top and 1 X on bottom, that will reduce to just X. Oh, there's a 4 too. And then 3 divided by 1 is -3. X over X, anything over itself is 1. So for my first set of parentheses, I've got 4x minus 3. That's what I need in my second one if I do it correctly. Again, is there any number that can divide into both 4 and 3? Just one. And so since we're pulling out a 1, this time it actually has to be a -1. So when we put it out in front, we need to make sure we do -1. Negative divided by a negative becomes a positive. 4 divided by 1 is 4. And there's an X. 3 divided by -1, that's going to be a -3. Don't forget the 0. So we listed the factors, we found a factor pair, we split the middle, we're doing factor by grouping. So as soon as we make sure that we've got 2 factors that are exactly the same, that gets rewritten out in front one time. And then we write down what we have left. Can I set those factors equal to 0 and solve? Yeah. I would like for you to try that on your own. I'm going to do it up on the board. Only one of them do you have to show me work for. Did y'all get the same thing? Are y'all starting to get the hang of it? We got 2 more problems. The only way you'll get the hang of it is by practicing. Big passes. All right, next problem. For this one, is there a number that I can divide out for all of these? Yeah, let's try it. Let's divide it out to 2. That might make our lives a little bit easier. divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Anything over itself is 1. Anything over itself is 1. So we check for a GCF. Good, awesome. Did that leave us to where we can fast factor though? Is the leading coefficient 1? No, Aaron's right. No, it's not 1, it's a 2. So darn it, that would be nice, but we still have to split the middle. So we need to find factors of A times C. Remember, this is A, this is C. So it's 2 times -1. So we're dealing with -2. So we've got factors of -2, but first we can just start with factors of 2. 1 and 2, bam. So we have to be able to put them together in such a way that we make -1. So which one has to be negative? The 2, yeah. So 2 will be negative and then the 1 will be positive. So we found our factors, we've figured out the factor pair, we're gonna split the middle. Please do not lose the 2 out in front. So I'm splitting the middle and I'm gonna call that plus 1x.
-1.
Do what?
What's on the right? Like,
So the only way that you can make -1 with 1 and 2 is it has to be a -2 plus 1 will
Yeah.
give you -1.
Should be like -1x and 1.
1 and 1 don't multiply together to make -2. It has to multiply together to make 2 times -1. So it has to multiply together to give you -2. Don't lose the 2 out in front. Now that we have 4 terms, we can factor by grouping. First group, second group. What I notice is that my first group, everything's positive, and the second group, everything's negative. So that means that for my second group to make the signs match, I'm gonna have to divide out a negative. For my first group, what can divide into both 2 and 1? Just a 1, and they both have an X. Please do not forget the 2 out in front. It's part of your answer. So I can pull out an X and then I write down what I have left. Anytime I have X squared over X, I'm just left with X. 2 divided by 1, 2. 1x over 1x, that just becomes 1. For my second group, what can I divide both into 2 and 1? Yeah, it's just gonna have to be a -1. So I pull that out in front, it's gonna be a -1. And negative divided by a negative is a positive. 2 divided by 1 is 2, and there's an X. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. Anything over itself is 1. Did I end up with 2 factors that are exactly the same? Yes. So I'm going to write that one time out in front and then write down what I have left. For these, I can find my solutions. Any questions on this one? The next one is gonna be on your own. So I'm gonna write it up on the board. I'm gonna wait to show you guys until it is done. You can talk with your group, but I want you to work it on your own. Yeah, because I was out of town.
That. You're on this.
We could today. After we're done with notes, we will. Please make sure that you are working on number 6 from the notes. Do what? Oh yeah, you do. The back is all review. Doesn't it say mixed review? Okay, everybody should be finishing up this last question. Because otherwise you aren't gonna have. Like what would happen is like we get to negative -1.
Yeah. There's no reason to wait by. But I don't think so.
So for this one, I got, this is the 2x and the 5. They come from. What's one? You can't.
Send me that line.
Yes, with 10 and 4. Right on the two.
I don't know the one.
I think you were the only one. Motion? All right, you guys should be working on number 6. Put all my stuff away. You can't do your work. It's factors of 8 times 2, 3 times 2. It's factors of 3 times 2. Well, and you just missed today's entire lesson.
Because the entire level.
The entire lesson, you're done. So I would do the first one, but yeah, you wanted to have choice of the left with that.
Oh. Is that on campus? It's on campus?
Well, it will be in the. So if you are stuck, you can look to get a hint, but then you need to go back and continue working. So here it is up on the board. The very last one. And on the homework, all those homework problems should be on the front, set equal to 0. Otherwise, you can't find solutions. My bad. They should have been equal to 0, but they weren't. So add equals 0